do this.
All right, let's go live when you're ready.
Gavel.
Now, bring the meeting to order. First business is approval of minutes. Has everybody had a chance to review the minutes?
Sir, I move to approve the minutes other than the first line header change.
It says developmental, our development committee.
Change that to finance.
I'm good to go.
So moved.
I approve with motion of amendment.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right,
Good work.
John?
So I'm going to go through the 6 months ended December 31st financials. So I'm going to talk first off of the key highlights on the revenue side. And I'm going to use this as a talking point. If we want to deep dive into stuff, we can go to the other sub-schedules for the detail. So for the 6 months ended December 31st, we were favorable on the revenues to budget by just about 2.9 million on a budget of about 37.6 million. Consistent with some of the narrative that we have given in the past couple months, it's being driven by the federal funds that are favorable versus budget to the tune of about 3.1 million, and this is due to utilization of the ARPA funding for the operator trainees' wages and taxes. That's included in there. We've used about $1.522 million year to date in the 6 months for that. In addition, it's for favorable for the direct generated funds of 267,000, which is due to the interest income taking advantage of the higher interest rates. Hopefully they'll stay around for at least another 6 months or so. And the investment balances are a little bit higher than we had contemplated when we prepared the budget. Offsetting these favorable items are the local funds. They're unfavorable. As you recall, the budgetary assumption was that the local trip match grant, $1.5 million, was going to be, or actually it's $1.6 million, was assumed to be covered out of the GRTC reserve. So it's about $176,000 a month. So cumulatively, it's about $848,000. All in all, the majority of the favorableness is due to the use of the ARPA funds for the trainees, offset by our local share reserve funding, being offset by the favorable interest income. So on the expense side of the house, we're about $3.5 million favorable on a budget of 39.8 million, and the key items, labor and in aggregate of all the different categories is favorable $56,000, and that's as you'll see, vehicle operations is unfavorable $766,000 versus budget, but that's due to the operator salaries and wages of about $1.1 million, offset by favorable supervision salaries about 183. So once again here, our budget contemplated 300 full-time operators. So as of the December head count, we had 320 full-time operators, 27 part-timers. So that gives us a 333.5 full-time equivalent. Plus we had 17 trainees in the mix at that point. Once again, cumulatively with the wages of the trainees from the 6 months and taxes was about $1.5 million. So not new, kind of what we're consisting to. The trainees are winding down now. I think there's only 8 of them that are in as of January. So on the vehicle and maintenance facility, slightly unfavorable in the labor, about $59,000, and that's driven by new higher bonuses and incentives and a little bit of overtime that's kicking in. So that's basically, it's the unfavorable about $96,000 due to that, and it's offset by a little bit of favorable fringe. Maintenance is at its budgeted headcount of 72, so there's not a lot of concerns. It's just a little bit of the timing. And the overtime is coming down, which we can show you in the other slide. G&A is favorable, almost $920,000, and that's basically just due to vacant positions. That salary is about $577,000. On the services line, we're favorable about 2.2 million, and this is coming down primarily driven in the professional and technical services category. It's favorable planning and consulting. The large grant-funded studies, North-South BRT, environmental clearance and conceptual design, Western BRT, extension, micro demo grant, as well as some of the advertising promotion associated with the 1A extension microtransit. The actual rollout of those and the actual expenditures of those are different than what the budgetary assumptions. So those are timing. So it's just, it's not that we're really off plan. It's just that our assumptions are a little different from where we're actually going. Contract maintenance services favorable, on BRT maintenance and building maintenance split about 50-50, offset by slightly maintenance, and other services are just slightly favorable due to the timing of education, training, and other expenses. Materials consumed out favorable 967,000. That's due to the timing of calendarization. We're seeing this about $416,000 in fuel and lubricants. That's part of it is that our budget was a little more pessimistic about pricing than we have actually seen, and then the other part is about 379,000 caught in vehicle parts, and that's our items. We have new buses coming in, so less repairs. Utilities this month, unlike last month, was unfair. With this month, the month of December, we were favorable to the budget by about $163,000, and that was due to the correction of the unusually high water consumption volumes with, say, Richmond. Had a resolution reached, and then we got our January bill. So
Hey, there's time. It takes time.
yeah,
The
so
government sometimes just takes a little bit. Takes a cycle.
it's like Galileo's pendulum. So we had a conversation this morning. So we're working on that as well as gas still. But for the water, we did change the meter in the pit. So now it appears the verb on the meter didn't get changed. So that's what we think is causing it. To be at our next briefing, we'll know more. But we still think, we still think the favorableness will hold. Casualties and liabilities cost is favorable about $330,000. This is due to the timing of the provision for uninsured motorists. We usually book that at the end of the year, but it's calendarized throughout the year, as well as some of the renewal premiums for general liability were favorable versus budgetary assumptions. Purchase transportation's unfavorable about $232,000 on the budget of about 3.8, and that's due to the higher demand for Care and Care Plus transit services and miscellaneous expenses driven lower than budget travel and meeting expenses to date versus the calendarization. I'm going over here to, as I talked briefly about in this section here, where I have some of these charts. As you can see from the overtime portion, you can see the head count. This is the head count here is not on FTEs. It's just in total heads, but you can see in the charts for the month of December here, the overtime for maintenance just for the month was about 7.36. And transportation is dropped down to 1.8. And then if I show you down to the table at the bottom of the year to date, you can see maintenance is still on its 7.4, but you can see that the transportation with the addition of the new operators has gone down from around 4.5% down to the current 1.88. So you can see that in maintenance, some of the unfavorability is being driven by the amount of overtime there to meet the needs of pull out and the other repairs. So moving over to the balance sheet. What we see here in the trend, we operate, kind of like in a solidly quarterly pattern. At the end of June, we had a significantly high cash balance, and then we're working our way back down. You can see we're less than we were. And this is cash. This is combined both operating and capital. So we concluded the quarter with about $1.3 million, I believe, in operating cash. So as you can see, we had a higher receivable balance than year end. This is just due to the timing of the grants receivable. But we did increase assets, total assets up by about $9 million from year end. You can see that it's split between, primarily in the tangible property. The net capital assets have increased. And the other part of it is in our increase in the restricted CBTA funds. All in all, there's no concerns on the balance sheet. Liquidity's good, we're healthy.
The only question I have is revenues are up 2.8. Expenses are down 3.5 and the net operating position's 4180. Wouldn't that be like 6.3 instead of 4.1?
Yes, 4.1.
Okay, but so what am I missing? Because if revenues are up by
Because,
8,
yeah.
what's the starting number?
So what the budget contemplated at this point in time was that there would be a deficit of about 2.188 million.
Okay, that's where the difference is.
And then we're actually.
I just wanted to
Surplus.
understand, that's fine.
Yeah, so at that bottom, that's just looking at our actual revenues in-house versus the actual expenses where the budget is contemplating different.
The starting number was a negative.
Correct.
Okay, that makes total sense, just.
So I thought your question was going to be is that, as you can see here, is the cash flow projections. This is what I was talking about. We ended the month of December with $1,352,000. This is because when we're taking the money, the match grants that's coming out of our checkbook, we're not getting it. So we're a little bit closer than we were.
Oh, the money comes in.
Yeah, so that, as you can see, as we.
I understood that part. I just was trying to add my numbers up and I'm going,
So as you can see, for January, we're forecasting about an $8.8 million position, and then February around 10 because we have some grant reimbursements coming through. On the CBTA schedule, we filed the quarter ending March. December 31st, 2023 with CBTA. So now we're just looking at starting for the next quarter. We have January receipts in. The 2.758 million is consistent with the last couple of months. We're earning some nice returns, both on the Wells Fargo Treasury Sweep. It's about 520 basis points. LGIP is around 420 basis points, or 430 basis points. Minimal expenses that came out were just for about $10,000 for the microtransit implementation plan. And as you can see here, we funded, Q3 to the tune of, $5.852 million, leaving a balance at the end of January about $38 million. So in essence, down here, as you look at, how the composition is about $765,000 for studies, and the remaining $37.8 million is set out for the fourth quarter of 2024, leaving us about 26 million, 26.126 million 2025 funding. So we basically have 25s already funded in. So that'll be subject to the regional public transportation plan that we will take to the CBTA board for adoption of the GRTC's operating capital plan in May timeframe. So that's kind of the month, 6 months in at December, in a nutshell, field question.
The good news is on the statement of income, everything you said matched. So I found the 2.188 that was projected with the other numbers and they all match. So thank you. FY 2025.
Switch sharing.
Do you have any questions, Carl? I guess enough.
I had to find my unmute. I'm sorry. No, I'm good.
Okay.
John, while you're bringing up the budget, I would just add, I guess, that's officially one, that's a really good financial report as far as the stability, the depth. I mean, I appreciate it. Getting used to your style and how you show it. And it's, obviously it's clear, it's concise. Thank you. But also position wise for the organization. Sure. I mean, that's got to give comfort as you move on to the future plan. fiscal stability. Again, we've only been here for what, a year and a half, but
Yeah, time
What a
flies.
difference a year and a
a
half.
good place for this organization to be nimble as we move forward. We also run a lot of boards, and it's pretty good fiscal. I would think you would agree, pretty good fiscal position because of the way the money's been used, the CVTA, stability.
Like having it in advance.
Well, I think everybody ought to, I mean, I actually think that the localities need to adopt 6-month budgets and change to a January 1st fiscal year so that they can budget. They'll always know what they're getting from the state before they have to budget.
It'd be nice.
But we can't do that because state law doesn't allow it.
90-day budget. We did 90-day disbursements during COVID. Quarterly, the finance staff didn't love it, but.
What else are they doing? I mean, they're at home.
Beneficial for us, for sure. But I don't know, I just wanted to say that the fiscal position for the organization is strong, allows us to do what we need to do for growth, puts us in a good spot for the jurisdiction's goals.
Taking care of our biggest weaknesses over the last year plus, staffing and other pieces.
And preparing.
Yeah.
More to do.
Always.
Yeah,
We're not done.
Never done.
We're not done.
So at, there we go. So at the January meeting, we kind of just went over the operating assumptions. So the only thing that really changed on this slide is that we've gone through and, we looked at the wages and so forth. So this number, the number of the operators has stayed the same. However, the total gross wages and all the other stuff just went up a little bit. So, but as compared to the fiscal 24 adopted budget. So basically our budget here is contemplating 325 fixed route operators, 30 microtransit and 22 part-timers, giving us 366 FTEs. And this reflects the contract wages that are in place for the CDL operators, as well as it does contemplate adequate funding for our negotiations with the union for the microtransit operators. So you can see that the blended wage rate is about $32.63 for the top rate for the operators contemplated in the budget. Likewise, there was nothing that changed on this side. We still have the same positions that we and the dollar amounts associated that we presented in January. So we still, our insurance safety continues the participation in the Virginia Transit Liability Pool. We as a management team are going to continue to invest in the GRTC workforce, market adjustments, wages and salaries, training development, and nationally recruiting for the open positions. The assumptions here: revenue miles, 7,084,000, revenue hours, 610,000. So about 16.82 and 12.63% increase over the prior year's adopted budget. And we briefed you before in the board at January, we got the authorization. We're currently in the open enrollment process right now through February 12th. So one of the changes that you'll see at the next time we bring it is we'll have the actual census of who's in what, whether it be the consumer-driven plan with the HSA or the OAP. So we'll be able to crystallize the health benefit numbers with the actual enrollments the next iteration. But the 7.5% increase premium is a large driver, but it is what it is. It's based upon our experience rates. So wellness is what it's on as well. So when you roll this all up, so the expenses, so this wasn't included in the January because we were still refining and vetting and checking it. So what we have here, similar to last year, you have the adopted budget column here. This is our baseline, 74.1, and then we're also reflecting, the grant funded projects, which are primarily the planning and consulting as well as the marketing. So looking at, the baseline growth, 81.3 million up from 74.1, and obviously the wages for the operators are a significant driver. As you can see right there on top, the top line, operations is going from 31 to 37. There's a $6 million increase. So some quick math, that takes you to $80.1 million. The benefits, you also see that there's another $800,000 increase. That's a function of the 7.5% increase in the medical benefits, as well as that we're expecting more more lives in there with the headcount increases. Some of the planning and scheduling studies are down, in the grant funded side, as well as in the baseline. But primarily the story of the major changes is basically the headcount is headcount driven in operations, as well as building out the executive, the admin. Now, looking at it on the from the perspective of wages and benefits, you see here it's roughly $7 million on wages and benefit lines, slightly down on the maintenance line, a little bit down on fuels and lubricants. The pricing is, we're a little more optimistic on that pricing. Services, this encompasses all your consulting as well as outside other outside things, outside services we procure. Included in that would be Spectran services. The casualty insurance, expecting a little harder market for renewals in here. Our renewals, as you recall, are usually in the June and July timeframe, so they're right after we adopt the budget. So we take the best guess of what we think the market is, and obviously in our insurance program, with the increase in headcount, we're expecting to see higher worker comp premiums and any other ones that are driven by that. Property casualties, driven by the asset base, so that's increasing as we're investing. For the fleet and so forth. Utilities basically flat. Travel and training, relatively flat. And so, once again, here it's salaries and wages that are basically the big driver. On the revenue side, we're zero fares continuing through June 30th of 2025 is the built-in assumption. We have the DRPT zero fare grant, which DRPT is contributing $1 million. We're hoping to renew the VCU relationship at $1.2 million, which is the current contract that goes from August 1st through July 31st. And we're also looking for $4.5 million of matching zero fare contributions to be determined. DRPT operating expense contribution, we're forecasting at the top of the ceiling, which would be 30% of the fiscal 2023 operating expenses. So that's currently plugged in at 20.77 million. CVTA, as we showed before, we have $26 million already in, and we still have another 5 months of collections before. But for the base service without the expansion, about 24.52 is put in there. Well, obviously, as we continue towards with the regional public transportation plan, we may tweak that or adjust that, because it's the difference between the 24,520 and the capital versus what we collect. We have money that goes into that internal reserve that we invest in it. So we may, as we move through the process, refine that number. There is no studies. We have enough study money already in to handle us, so we didn't allocate any of that fund for that. The operating contributions right now, 3% is the assumption for CPIU. That will yield an increase in operating contributions a little under 405,000. February 13th will be our next bite, but if it follows the scaling trend, the 3% should be appropriate. We're a little bit under right now at 2.36 based upon the actual through December. January's is released on February 13th, and the February will be released on March 12th. So once again, as we go to the April Finance Committee meeting, we'll have this number nailed down so that we can communicate back to finance offices. As you can see, 9.01 and 1.53 were the two previous adjustments. So it's going to probably be in the, I think it's going to be less than 3, but we're factored in 3 at this point to be conservative, and have communicated that with finance departments in each of these. So as the calculations work out here, City of Richmond's 9.275 million. We do. All of this is operating, but as it goes back to the fiscal 20 appropriations, Richmond had set aside capital versus operating, so we've baked in the 9079 into the operating, and we put the 196,520 into the capital portion. Henrico, $4.4 million, and Chesterfield, $261,000. We also have in here, we have a total of about $600,000 in sponsorship, partner programs to be determined as well. Based upon we also have here, this number is, we put in about $10.27 million for preventive maintenance from 5307 Flex and about $1,380,000 for ADA Flex. So this would be probably coming from the programming of either our fiscal 21, fiscal 22, or 23 5307 funds, which we can report that we have actually split letters that are executed and submitted to the FTA for fiscal 23 and 22 as well. So we're waiting to see what the fiscal 24 awards are. Those should be coming out to the the UZA information should be coming out within the next couple of weeks. So we can make calculations pretty easy and then have the 24 split letter turned around hopefully by the time we adopt the budget. And any surplus money it will be continued to be forwarded into put into the funding of the operating reserve up to the limit of 25%. So as the expenses are going, the ability to put money in there is increasing. I know this one's a little more of an eye chart. I apologize, but it's it obviously it ties to the expenses and what the same concept. We have a column for the baseline, which was basically our core operations, and then on the right side we have the grant funded funds, the matching local pieces, the continuation of the Chesterfield funding of the 1A, and then we have a few state reimbursed grants that we filed with the RPT at the end of January. So we will know what the actual awards for state operating contribution TISDAC as well as those grants, those will come out in the April timeframe. So we'll incorporate and refresh and update this as we progress towards the budget adoption in May. So our goal here for the timing is to use probably around the April board meeting to disseminate the proposed budget books that have more detail and narrative at the time added around the April board meeting, and then utilize the May Finance Committee meeting kind of as a budget workshop where we can go through the budget book and field any questions from any concerned members of the board, so that when we get to the physical May board meeting, that we've hopefully addressed any concerns, questions, or and include everyone's input, so that we can progress forward for the adoption of both the fiscal 25 operating and capital budgets, and at the same time in a parallel path working through CBTA with the 2025 Regional Public Transportation Plan, so that we're all set for July 1st of 2025. Change dates. So we still have some more work to do, but we're progressing. We're on track, and we don't see anything, showstoppers or any critical issues that we weren't expecting. So, any questions?
So what could be, I know, things that would typically create some challenges in 2024 for our projections? Or I'm just curious what your thoughts are. Where do you feel sensitivity moving forward?
I mean, we have, right now the sensitivity would be the to be determined, zero fare grant matches.
Yeah, that's
the $600,000 in advertising revenue.
Sure.
Uncertainty about where the Fed is, from the interest, the interest has been earning, we've been very fortuitous to be able to have
having money to be making interest, you're good.
Yeah. So that may be, if you, depending on who you want to listen to, Jamie Dimon, the Fed, or whoever, we could be down 3.5% by the December of 2024. Who knows? There could be a recession. There could not be a recession. I don't know where fuel pricing is going to be either. So there's a lot of.
That's one of my questions too. I want to get to that when we get to come out to expenses. But on this page, if I may, Mr. Chair, I have a couple questions on the revenue piece. On a couple minutes, I mentioned that we're in a good position because we've been super conservative with how we've dealt with. You've always budgeted a full head count, which we know we're in a good position because of our conservative nature. So my questions are to that CVTA number, the 24.5. I would say that's conservative. Super conservative, I would say, right? That's good.
Even though, and that's a good point. I mean, VDOT released its forecast in December 2023. They've actually taken down the revenues, but from when we go through in the monthly report, the January distribution, the December distribution, the November and October are all at 2.8 million, and those are kind of the highs I've seen. So it's been tracking different than what the VDOT forecast is. But
so that makes me comfortable.
even with this number in here, there's still money that is not allocated of 15% of what the VDOT forecast would be, less the capital piece.
And that's what I'm trying to get. That's my point. So like on the revenue side, I would argue that we need to remain as conservative as we can. And on the expense side, reverse. I'd like to be conservative with fuel costs, things like that, because that's what's made us successful. So quite frankly, the 24.5, that is conservative enough for me, leaving what I would consider to be about $5 million, 20% conservative on that number alone. On the TISDAC thing, is that crazy algorithm on ridership?
Yeah, sorry.
All right, so can someone thumbs up or thumbs down if that number's conservative? Based
So-
on those additional million miles?
Stack formula.
The issue there with that is that, we know that, we got guidance from DRPT. I forget who it was that told us to use the 30%. So the only risk would be there is if someone else had a significant uptick in ridership, and we'll know this number probably by the second week of April.
All right, I would just argue the same thing, be conservative with it. Revenues, please project low. And that's why the 4.5 scares me. And I would like to know what is the TBD plan for that gives us the confidence to put 4.5 million in our budget, which is 5% of our total budget. It's actually 6.5%, 7% of our total budget. So do we have 6% confidence in that, or you know what I mean? Like I'm just saying, I'm being honest. I would like to not have it in the budget if it's for 6% if we're not confident about something.
We're in year 3 of the grant, so the grant requires to have a match. So whether if it's not incremental, then it has to come out from either our funding or from the
You're
operating.
3 of 3, right? We have to find that.
Yeah.
So I did apply for
Additional grants.
basically a subsidy supplement to the current grant, knowing that we actually did come in at 860. We came in at 56.31. Well, we're actually only at 12%. Realizing that happened, they supported me applying, so we'll find out in April. And it's not normal for them to add back, but since we basically left money out there, it seems
You told us that before, that's where that comes to play. In April, we'll have a better idea. When does this go into full adoption?
April, the DRPT will release the
Budget, I mean, when does the board adopt it?
Ours would be May.
So that gives us time to be more
There's
accurate.
also some state revenue of continuation of projects that from the state that will have to be added on top of here, reflected here.
Gotcha.
that alleviates some of your
Correct.
revenue.
Yeah, so in here, to make this, right now it kind of balances, it basically is $85,000 surplus.
Yeah.
And the lever here, is the federal COVID release. I put in $1 million, basically $1.8 million just in there. So we do have COVID ARPA funds available, and we know that there's a clock on those. Like we're using those for the operator training. We do have other, as we go towards expansion for advertising programs, we do have a schematic as to what we would use them, but we do have those as a relief.
I just want to, before we bring this to the board in May, I'd like to tighten up that I don't want to leave 6% of our revenue expectation out there if we don't have a better idea.
We have some conversations.
Okay, good. Can you flip back to expenses? I'll be quick on those two. I don't know if there's a chart like this on expenses or I can do it slide by slide. Yeah. Yeah, perfect. That's a good one. That's a good one. So that's the lubricants and stuff is my question. It's down 300. I get the forecast, but a million more miles. We're taking that into consideration, right? We're going 1 million more miles.
They zero budgeted that. We can take a look at it.
Because of the new vehicles.
That's awesome.
We still have
So
to-
they're more in that, you know, so they're converting, we're getting rid of the diesel. So the diesel consumption is going down.
That's awesome. I just love when you get in budget year and you're saying we're favorable on expenses because we were conservative with our thoughts. So if we're budgeting 1 million more miles, don't under budget fuel. And maintenance, I get it, it's down because of newer equipment. That totally is fine with me.
And so, you know, the big component on, you know, on the fuel for the buses is CNG. So I did the CNG based upon looking back at the, you know, the trends, as well as I was kind of, in one of our discussions with Richmond DPU is about they should be hedging or buying off the pipe head.
I'm sure we have a fuel calculator per mile driven. I'm sure we have it. And I'm sure hopefully we're using that, not just using.
We went from our consumption from the bills as well as a build up, and it turned out the average consumption of bills was higher, so we went with the more conservative use of CNG.
Go back one more screen. Just one more chart like that. Those would be wages. No, that's, all right, I think I'm good on planning scheduling. You explained that, why that's down. So it's wages, and the only other thing I would have on that is we're budgeting maximum.
Yeah, we don't have a large vacancy factor.
Perfect, yeah, I was gonna say, budget 100% wages in full. I would even buy 105% staff, because we're over it now, right? That's good.
But right now, we have the vacancies in fiscal '24, the vacancies are on the admin side, which is offsetting,
Yeah.
you know, we're about, you know, maintenance is just basically the overtime and.
Yeah.
So you're using it to buffer it that way.
I'm good. I think my key point is continue to be conservative on the expenses up, and please continue to be conservative on the revenue down. And I'd rather come out favorable.
That's a good point, John. About this.
It's just a mindset, right? It's a mindset of budget conservatively on both sides, up on expenses, down on revenue, and be happy. At the end of the day, rather than struggle.
We go, you know, we kind of collected this together. So over the next, balance of February into March, finance and planning, we're going to go through these with operations and kind of go through the exercise, get another month of performance, the actuals, and we'll vet these out and take a deep dive so that when we come to April, we're really comfortable with where we are, and we'll have more medical and tighten it up.
I'm good then, sir. Thank you.
I have one last question, just, that's the last time I believe. The ability of going to lease or debt or some other capacity of vehicle purchasing, would that help our cash flows moving forward? Because I know that there's a lot of volatility in the ability for us to purchase outright a lot of the equipment, and wondering how pursuing an authority type of action so we could do debt service or other types of funding vehicles for this expansion, because if we continue to add more vehicles and expand more routes, just thinking forward of, it's a big chunk of have money to put in from our budget from a purchasing standpoint, if we could spread it out, just curious.
And that's part of the action of the TSP plan going to the 10-year plan and so forth. So all our vehicles were purchasing off of 5307 funding. So I think at the prior meeting, we talked about debt. So I think we need to look at our charter and bylaws. They're pretty much ministerially based, talking about quorums and approvals, but there doesn't have a section on authorizing us to issue debt either in the GRTC or RIDE. So that's something that is, as we undertake other initiatives, what our discussion was, do we have the ability? So I think, what we have, the revenue stream for talking about a revenue bond program, we probably could do it, but we just would have to sit here and have some work on the charter and bylaws as to.
It had to be bonded against CVTA
I was
money.
gonna say, that's
right?
where I would angle it, would be CVTA funding, and use their umbrella for that.
Did reach out to Bonnie already to start the conversation, but secondly, our vehicles, between 5307, they're also state matched. So local funding is very minimal for those, it's usually 4%. Second, there's a lot of opportunities. So we have 19 buses coming in now, and they're 100% federal. The opportunity comes around many times.
We don't need to mess with that.
Yeah, so.
No, we don't need to mess with that. I'm just also looking at, as we had sort of, the state might be cutting certain program funding, and there's things where, yes, right now it works
But if we
great,
did need it.
but if we did need it,
We might,
it
might be something you can look at for shelters. To
Also very
be able to,
Yeah.
Infrastructure and vehicles is very heavily supported.
Just-
The issue is.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we attract one of those manufacturers here?
Work your magic. Love to.
Okay.
Anything else? Do you have any questions, Tom?
Yes, all the good ones.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right. Anybody else, anything?
Sure.
All right, we're adjourned.
Good work.
Thank you.
Thank you.